Hi there, and welcome to Master of Horror.
True, scary, paranormal story number 1. The Haunted Apartment.
Hi, I used to live in a townhouse in Rosenberg, Texas, in the mid-1990s. We had an older man named Johnny who was the maintenance man, and he had a friend named Ted that would help him do the maintenance work for the townhouses. So when people would move out, Johnny and Ted would have to clean up the apartment, fix it up, and get it ready for the new occupants. Johnny would tell me that people would leave the most outrageous things behind. He claims that most people never even cleaned up the place when they left, leaving most of their valuables behind. Well, one day, Johnny the maintenance man told me that something horrible happened to him the night before. He had spent the night in one of the apartments that he was cleaning out, and he claims that he was alone in the apartment around 1 o'clock in the morning, and instead of driving back home, he decided to spend the night since there was so much work to be done. Ted, his friend that usually helps him, didn't come that night to help Johnny, so Johnny was all alone and the electricity was off. But Johnny the maintenance man had his flashlight, and he said that he had some candles with him, and he had made a small sleeping area on the carpet floor and laid down to sleep to try to get some rest before he had to wake up in a few hours to start work again. He claims in the middle of the night he was awoken by someone calling his name in the room. No one was in the room at the time. He thought it was his imagination and went back to sleep. But then he woke up again about an hour later, feeling sharp pain coming from beneath his feet. He moved the blanket from his feet, and he saw that he had red marks under his feet, as if someone was scratching his feet. He said it was really painful, and he got up and walked around the room to brush it off. He then heard a noise coming from the closet. That's when he opened the closet door, and to his surprise, there was a Ouija board on the top shelf. Whoever lived there cleaned out the whole apartment, but left the Ouija board behind. He got chills all over his body when he saw it, and quickly threw the board in the trash outside the apartment. He went back to sleep, and then was awoken a third time, feeling pain coming from his feet again, as if someone was punching the bottom of his heels. He jumped up and quickly opened the closet door to see if the board was still there, and to his surprise, even after throwing the Ouija board away, the board was in the same original spot it was in, on the closet top shelf. He got his keys as fast as he could, claiming that it felt as if he was being watched. The whole time his flashlight wasn't working anymore for some reason, and he couldn't find his candles. He had to find his way in the dark out of the apartment. And he claims while he was going down the stairs in the dark, he heard something right behind him following him down the stairs. While he was driving away, he said he saw a cloaked black figure looking out the bedroom window that he was sleeping in. He said he never went back to that apartment, and he's always stayed away from Ouija boards.
Paranormal story number 2. The Tallman bunk beds.
In Wisconsin, in early February of 1987, Alan and Debbie Tallman purchased bunk beds at a second-hand shop. They stored them in their basement, but 3 months later, in May of 1987, they moved the bunk beds upstairs to their kids' bedroom. This marked 9 months of paranormal experiences for the family that has ever been recorded. Strange occurrences began to happen nightly. The first night the bunk beds were upstairs, their oldest son went into his parents' room, claiming that his radio clock was playing music by itself and turning through different stations on its own. Alan, the father, got upset, thinking that his oldest son was being immature and just playing around, and took the radio away from him and warned him to behave. Another night, as their kids were asleep, they were awoken by something or someone crawling on the ground, portraying a dog and growling at them. Even though it was dark in the room, they could still see the outline of a dark shadow crawling in and out from underneath their bunk beds. Also, their daughter would explain that there was a fire in her room. When Alan and Debbie went to investigate, they found nothing. About a week later, one quiet night, Alan and Debbie heard their daughter screaming. When they came to see what was wrong, she claimed there was a witch with red eyes behind her bedroom door. Later that week, Alan Tallman came home from working night shift around 2 o'clock in the morning. After pulling in the driveway and getting out of his car, he began to hear howling in the wind. The wind began to pick up, and the howling got louder. He then heard a voice say, "Come here," from around the side of the house. He walked over to the side of the house, and there was nothing there. When he came back around the corner to the front of the garage, to his shock and to his horror, the garage was on fire, with flames reaching past the rooftop. He quickly went into his house to retrieve a fire extinguisher, and when he came back outside, there was no fire, nor any indication of one. He walked inside the house and closed the front door in disbelief. As he reached down to pick up his lunch kit, it was thrown across the living room by an unknown entity. There was a night where Mr. Tallman had to go to work and asked his brother Todd to stay the night with his family to protect them from whatever was haunting their house. That night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, Todd was asleep on the floor of the kid's bedroom when he was awoken by a noise he heard coming from the closet. Fog began to slowly appear out of nowhere. He then sat up and stared at the closet door as it began to slowly open. What happened next will forever be a secret that no one knows. A bright light filled the room, and Todd witnessed something truly terrifying. He screamed. With no emotion on his face, we will never know what he saw, and to this day he doesn't want to tell anyone. He never said exactly what he saw at that moment, but Debbie entered the room and began to grab her children. She asked Todd, what did he see? But he did not answer her. He slowly walked out of the room like a zombie, with no facial expressions at all. After about a minute, he then snapped out of it and began to get the rest of the kids out of the house, and they left the house that night. The family then immediately had the bunk beds crushed by a bulldozer, and not long after that, they moved out of their house hoping that the ghost or entity would never follow them ever again.